Hi, everybody. Welcome to tonight's edition of the Chatroom. We are glad and excited to be here tonight. Joanna,
Hi everybody, what's good? What's good? How is everybody doing tonight? Good to see you for this epic, lovely moment we're going to have in the chat room tonight. Yes.
amazing, amazing. So tonight is a big night for us. We have quite a big conversation in store for you guys, and we're really glad you're here, and just can't wait to get into that. Later on this edition, we'll be joined by Abel Chungu, who will be coming to share his insight on tonight's chat. So tonight's chat, what are we talking about today? So today we will be talking about mental health. And our focus is what are the leading causes of mental health related issues among us Zambians, and how can we combat them. So we'd love to hear from you tonight, and we encourage you to leave us a comment, to text us, to be a part of this conversation. We already see you guys watching in already. Good evening there at Malaki Ngoma. So we encourage you guys, if you're watching this from our ambassadors pages, do click on the link that's shared with the video for you to be a part of the conversation, and the like. So Anna, um, are you excited about tonight's topic, mental health?
I mean, I'm blown away. I'm blown away by tonight's topic. I think this is one of those topics that many people don't really take keen interest in, but
Yeah,
it's affecting everybody so much. Like, I've been hearing issues of suicide. Just recently, a CBU student, I'm told, committed suicide, which is absolutely horrible. And
yeah,
those things wouldn't happen if most of us tend or learned
yeah,
how to be healthy mentally. We know how to keep
yeah,
health in terms of our physical bodies. We go to the gym, we run, we know that stuff. But usually with the mind, we don't pay much attention to the state of our
yeah.
mind. So eventually we find ourselves in depression, we find ourselves in all those other issues. So I'm really excited to
Yeah.
learn about this.
Wow, 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 wow. All right, more of that coming on right after this. All right, welcome back. So before we went off, hi Laura, we see you here. So before we went off, one I was mentioning something about a story that recently came out of a student at the Columbia University who took his life. I remember reading that, and it just broke me, and it reminded me of the urgency of the subject that we're talking about tonight. Most of the time when we think of mental health, I think most of us view it as something
Yeah.
that's very far away, but it's something that's real and it's affecting society today. Thus, I'll need to table it down tonight. Mr. Lua, how are you?
I'm great, thanks. How are you doing?
All good, all good. So just jump right into it. Mental health. Let's get that ball rolling. What does that mean to you? And what do you think are the major or the leading causes of mental health related issues, and how can we combat them?
Okay, I think mental health basically has to deal with protecting the mind against negative toxicity. So in this case, it's the mind drifting towards a pessimistic way of living that in turn affects one's decisions to be directed towards a negative impact. And I feel one of the ways
Yeah,
in which we can protect ourselves from that is realizing that life has, and sources of mental health will always be unexpected or unmet expectations. So I think one of the things that we need to realize, there will be things that will cause me to drift beyond what I originally planned, what I originally thought life would be. Preparing yourself for that, although we can't completely prepare ourselves for that, but we can anticipate that life will throw us things that we may not be prepared for. And when our expectations don't match reality, I think those are the times when we need to protect our minds.
okay. Well. So tonight, I know the topic is broad, and we're not talking about mental health or looking at something that's small as acute to just having a breakdown or a burnout at work, to reaching a point where people even get to commit suicide. So I imagine it's quite a wide spectrum to look at when we talk about mental health. But where do you think it starts from most of the time? In terms of the build up, to get to a point where people get to take their own lives?
I think it starts from the fact that you're driving towards something that you have already seen your way out of, but then when you are locked in a place where you way out or you thought you had it all figured out, and all of a sudden you can't seem to breathe, something is suffocating you, and you can't just grasp yourself to grab that breath, almost like you're drowning and nobody's there to understand what you're going through. So I think it's sort of like an interruption in your life where you're just walking, something pushes you off and you're into a pool sinking for your life and you don't know what to do in that stage. You don't know how to swim, you don't know how to get yourself back to life. So I think, as I said earlier, I think it's the unexpected circumstances that do that, or the circumstances that we thought were going to pan out in a certain way that brings excitement or brings suitability as regards to who I am as a person, but that unawareness of what's going on around me, of what makes me happy, of how life has turned out to be when I thought this or that way, or the general having no clue as to what season you're in, as to where you're going, as to the things that's around you, the circumstances that are dictating your life, and all those things just begin to spring up negative thoughts.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so much and so rich. And I think I saw one. You already said something whilst Lua was speaking. So maybe we can have you comment something to share on the issue.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the issue. Usually, like Lua said, unexpected situations. You lost your job, you lost your wife, you lost your children, you lost everything, and where just tough situations come. I like to say you are not in charge of what happens to you, but you're in charge of how you react to what happens to you. A lot of times when we go through hard times, we sort of go into a closed corner or we get ourselves into a box. Sometimes people refuse to accept what has happened, and some others just pack it somewhere. But the issue is when you pack it somewhere, it's brooding, and just like how they make beer, they take actual maize meal and then they put it somewhere, leaving it to ferment. That's the way it happens with our issues as well when we just lock them away. They'll be fermenting, and with time, it's going to hit someone's mind, and that's what leads to things like suicide and everything. It's where the things that people locked away that used to bother them a lot, now they all jump at them at once, and their emotions are overwhelmed and everything. Yeah. So I think it's a very critical thing that we're talking about.
Wow, that's amazing. So in studio tonight, we are joined by Mr. Abel Chungu Musuka, and before he comes in, I think I have been following his conversation when it comes to the subject for some time now, and I know he's been speaking specifically mostly about men, talking about mental health and men. And that's because I think today there's when we talk about mental health, we usually don't focus on men as much. And when you look at statistics, it shows that more men are prone to stuff like suicide. More men are killing themselves. More men aren't open to talk about it and the likes. And not really to preempt stuff because you're talking about it. I just wanted to hear briefly, Lua, what are your thoughts when it comes to mental health and men? Do you think there's a stigma about that? Do you think they're more prone to mental health related issues than women?
Yes, I think there's a stigma in general, but I think the proportion to which men have to go through that stigma is a little bit more, or I wouldn't say a little bit, quite more. I think when it comes to men, there's always this traditional setup of be tough, you are a man. The culture that we've grown up with, not just in this culture as regards to Zambia or Africa, but generally all around the world, there is a certain mentality that men have to be tough, and strength is found in you being in your cave, dealing with your issues on your own. But the narrative should change, because that is what leads to suicide. Trying to solve things on your own and not realizing that there are certain things that you can go through and you can't go through them alone. And realizing that the burden can be lifted with somebody else, even just by sharing or just by comforting, I think it's important. So I feel, yes, men are stigmatized as regards to mental health protection. There's a side of our environment whose men need it less. and I feel
Yeah.
that stereotype needs to be broken.
Oh, oh. Mental health. Amazing chat. So more coming through right after this. All right, and we're back. So our friends were just joining in tonight. We're talking about mental health and looking at the leading causes of mental health related issues among the Zambians and how we can combat them. So coming in and joining into the conversation now, we have Mr. Abel Chungu. Feel free to share your thoughts, to interact and to comment as well. We're already getting quite a number of feedback coming in. And we would love to hear more from Mr. Abel Chungu at this moment, and he'll be right with you right after this. Mr. Abel Chungu, welcome to the chat room.
Hey, gents, how are you? I'm good. How are you doing?
All good, all good. We're glad you can make it tonight.
Thanks for having me. Thank you, thank you. I'm humbled to actually even be called for this discussion.
Awesome.
I'm just listening in, and you guys are just sounding like you've got it all together. I'm like, you know what? Let me just sit and watch.
That's funny. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so over the years, you've come out and you decided to speak out on mental health. So we thought it important, to have you here tonight and to hear from you. And we're gonna want to have a discussion with you briefly, but just to kick things off, I'd like to hear more about your inspiration, your passion. What kicked the ball for you? What made you start talking about mental health? What need do you see today to have this conversation on mental health?
I think for me, what really changed was, I wouldn't say that I lead any real discussion much, but I think I'm expressing it a lot more through my art. I think it would begin with a time that I also had a very intense mental breakdown, and it was also around the time one of my close friends had taken his own life. And being a public figure, what people consider, some people would say celebrity or whatever, you people always expecting that everything is good with you, because I'm sure a lot of people bringing in their testimonies, they're telling you their pain, they're telling you the stories, and at the time it didn't feel necessary, or I didn't see anyone who was basically sharing their story and saying, I'm not okay. But over the years, in terms of working with a lot of different guys and talking to a lot of friends, or getting a lot of phone calls from different friends who are telling you, like, listen, I'm having thoughts about suicide, and can you help me? And when you actually sit down and start talking to this person, they come and tell you, you come and open up and say, I've also been there. And they couldn't believe it at first. Like, why would you, you know what I'm saying? Because there's always the assumption. But when I realized that there was a lot of why would you, and how people would react when I would actually talk about it with them and talk about going through struggles, I think I began to realize that a lot more people just needed a place to express themselves. And sometimes the environments that they're in, or the relationships that are in, are not always the best places. I know there's a lot of people say, oh, talk to someone who's close to you. Sometimes even living with people doesn't necessarily always mean they're close to you, or they're trustworthy with your pain. And that's one thing that people also really need to understand, is that trust sometimes definitely has to be earned. opening up emotionally, that it can hurt you. Certain things can hurt you if people, weaponize your weaknesses. And I think that's a very common thing that men go through. So last year we're having a discussion with a friend of mine, my late friend's brother, and during that discussion is when a melody came to me, and I started writing a song called Mamuna Samalila. After that song came out, it opened the chance for us to do the first men's mental health conference in December at Chainama, and it was really amazing. And we're hoping to continue more of that. It's just that we know that when the Delta hit, it got a bit more intense than we had expected. But I think it's very, very important that we continue such programs, and this one as well, so we can make some headway. I know I've said a lot. I talk a lot. You'll figure that out as we go on.
All right.
Yeah.
I still want to make a gesture while you were speaking, so I imagine he has something to say or ask or add.
Yeah.
I think I relate a lot, especially in terms of the environment that you are in. Like, people won't really listen, people won't get it, and they won't think. That there are times where people would even ridicule the source of your pain. They go like, that's why you are in pain. There are people who have worse issues than you, and they're doing okay. So my question to you is, for that person who right now is watching this thing right now, and they have an issue that is just messing their mind up, what would be the first stage to being mentally healthy or getting out of that depression? What would you say would be the first thing they ought to do?
Oh man, I would always say, first, for me, being a Christian, is it's important to have a relationship with God. As one of the things that I think a lot of people have the assumption of is that coming to God, which means you're perfect. And I think that was also the problem, that sometimes when many of us, we fail to express these things because it feels like, if I express that I'm going through this issue, people assume I haven't, especially from a religious point of view or faith-based, people assume that I haven't been praying enough, or I haven't been, and some people even go to the extent of thinking that, maybe it's just God punishing me for something. And as long as we're on this earth with other people, we will always have issues. We'll always have struggles, we'll always have temptations, we'll always have fights, that we'll have battles that we lose. And one great example, I would give an example of David in the Bible, on how through his constant failures, what kept him afloat was the fact that he had a relationship with God, and God was there for him every single way, even when he flawed. So what would I give this person in advice? The first thing is, you have to accept the fact that, okay, this thing is happening. Seek wisdom, pray to God, but also seek wisdom. Find people that you can trust as well, good people. You might find that there is a perspective to your situation that you might not even have seen. Because sometimes when you're really up close to something, it just looks like the world is over. It just looks like that is the issue. But when you realize that when you're around other people who have experienced the same thing, or when you talk to someone, you realize, the most unexpected person will tell you, I went through the same thing. Oftentimes, like for example, losing someone is a very heavy thing. And during COVID, people lost people. I know a friend of mine who just lost her brother. I know what it was like when I lost my dad. I know people who have lost so much, children, parents. But where do they go? Because sometimes that was who you thought was everything, and then you lose that person. You need a place you can actually talk. You need a place that you can trust. And I talk, especially with this generation, I think we really throw the word mental health around because like it's a cool phase. When you say you're concerned about someone's mental health, it's gonna require being unknowing that the people that we love the most have ugly, dark things happening in their lives, have problems going into their life. I've seen so many people, especially on social media, I see people get kicked when they're down. People get dragged, and I'm thinking, is this the very same generation that has awoken to mental health? Because people do most drastic things when they're at their worst, the most out of character things when they're at their worst. And if we really are at the generation that's saying, okay, we are aware of mental health, then we must be aware of human characteristics and human failures and also human successes, and be able to fight that stuff head on. Yeah.
Well, amazing, amazing. So I have a couple of questions for you specifically, Mr. Abel,
Yeah.
and I would like to find out for an everyday person, for an average person in Zambia, to put it in context, um,
Yeah.
what can we do as individuals to contribute to making the world a safer place for individuals, for our friends, for our families who might be having mental health issues that we don't even know about, as generally in our everyday to day lives? What can we do in terms of what we have power to do to help them, even though we might not know them specifically, but just be conscious of
Hmm.
the reality that there are people living around us who are every day moving
Yeah.
around with very heavy burdens that we have to be conscious of.
Yeah.
But maybe before you answer that, I just see we're joined right now by one of our friends from the chat room. She came through because she has a story to share when it comes to mental health. So we're joined by
Hmm.
Miss Annette Apache, and I'd just like to have her through for a couple of minutes to share her experience on mental health, and then maybe you can answer that. So she'll be right in after this. Hi, Annette.
Hi. Hi,
Welcome
everyone.
to.
Hi.
Thank you.
Hello.
We're glad.
Hi, Ned.
It's such a privilege to be part of this conversation.
Yeah. So
I've
we're glad to
been
have you.
here.
We're glad to have you tonight. And obviously, I remember when we asked about things to talk about 6 weeks ago in the chat room group,
Yes.
you shared that you only talk about mental health specifically. So for the large
Yeah.
part, this conversation really is inspired by your contribution to what you wanted to talk about. And my understanding is you have a story to share in terms of mental health. You've experienced some situations firsthand, and we'd just like to hear from you briefly.
Okay. So, firstly, I think mental health is something that I think society is really shining away from it. I can say because so far I have lost like 2 friends due to mental health. So the first situation was, she was in university, but then you'd hear her talk, she would just be like, no, nobody loves me. I tried to do this, but it just seems like things are not working out for me. I'm not getting the love I'm getting from my parents, my friends, and what. But we all thought it was just some talk, just from the blues. But then in the end, somebody just commits suicide. So I felt that I think when people when somebody's talking about such things, we should give I think an ear to what they are saying, because it's, you might not know what they are going through. So personally, I feel that I think everyone is going through some mental health issues, except that maybe you might handle your situation better than what the other person might handle the situation. So that was just like my thought. And again, I read a podcast that said this guy, like he was being kept by the sister, and then so the sister gets his phone, finds that there are photos to do with porn. So the sister starts addressing the issue. Why are you having such things in your phone? You're at school, you're supposed to be studying, what, instead of you looking at these pictures and watching the certain videos. But then the guy took it really personal, and like the sister was upset, got the phone and smashed it. I mean, the reaction of the brother is that, why have you smashed my phone? And the phone, the pictures have no problem with me and my school. And the guy commits suicide, just like that. So it it was just like a huge concern for me, and yeah, so that's just what I wanted to do.
Wow. Thanks, Annette, for sharing that. I imagine that's quite heavy. I imagine that's quite heavy. Mr. Abel, anything to add before you answer the question?
Uh, I'll be ready to answer the question that you asked earlier on. If you can just rephrase it again.
Okay. So basically, what I was asking is, what can everyday people do to make the world a safer place for people who might be going through mental health related
Yeah,
issues?
yeah. So I think my answer will also be based on in line with what she was saying that could help in such situations. Um, I don't. One of the things that we need to understand. So my favorite scripture is John 13 verse 35. And Jesus said this. He said, "If you walk in love, only then will they know that you're my disciples."
Yeah.
In Matthew chapter 9, when the Pharisees were asking the disciples on Jesus, so there's a great passage when Jesus goes to Matthew's place, and Matthew at the time was considered like an outcast because he was a tax collector and collecting on behalf of the Romans. So he's generally hated, and so this drew a lot of people to go to Jesus's to go and meet Jesus and eat with him. And the Pharisees were saying, "Who are what? Why are all these guys eating with Jesus? Look at them, like they're pointing out, just like the tax, all these sinners." And Jesus said these. He says, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, a doctor, but those who are sick. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice." And what I really honestly tell people is that God really cares about your health, whether it's physical and also mental. And what you need to understand about that passage is that you are looking at people from the outside, the actions, but understand the actions were preceded by thought, were before that had thoughts. So as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. That's what the scripture said. By the time we perform our actions, we have either been troubled with a thought continuously. The question is, when we know, are we open enough to say, hey, how are you really doing? Because in my life, you find a lot of people when they greet you, they're already expectant of you saying, I'm well, I'm good. You know what I'm saying? And so greeting is often something that is just done passively. But the question is, how are you really? And we have the assumptions are oftentimes that success in terms of either wealth or some form of achievement, like she was talking about a friend where he was saying, but school is sometimes your success is expected, and you could be good at successful, but mentally you're not well. Mentally you're not well, but you're making money, but mentally you're not well. You are you're doing well in school, but mentally you're not well. So the question is, how can you be mentally well? And that's that. How can we approach? How can you know that people are mentally? By having the caring mentality, by having the heart to be able to understand that, oh, to call people up front. There was somebody I knew who was a public figure and was having what people would say a meltdown in public. And I was watching all the Facebook live posts and people were talking about them and saying all sorts of this. And I remember people would ask me, what do you think about this situation? And I called the person and we had a lengthy, long discussion. And then you realize what's actually going through someone's life. And they said, okay, but you can actually talk to me. You don't have to express it on social media. And sometimes when people go to certain lengths, they feel like no one will listen. And in that case of maybe the guy, he just felt like you guys, some oftentimes with shame, with things like, especially like pornography, it carries with it a shame. And the more you succeed, the bigger the shame. We last year we had we remember when a minister in government, pictures of them leaked out. Now, everyone clearly was talking about it and created it into a shame. But the question is, where was the discussion on mental health and how he was struggling with that? Because of course that wasn't released on purpose. But then again, at the same time, I see that people intend to intentionally put shame on people like for example, Iris, it'll come up every single time. She's there. So I feel like oftentimes as a society, we have a lot of healing to be able to do in ourselves. And the understanding that at the same time, we must build each other up. To be able to, yes, we can point at people and say, look at that person. And now imagine the more you achieve, you know that if I am to fall, I will be a laughing stock. How then do you encourage people, young people, to be successful? So we encourage also a culture of the more success you have, the more shame you have to hide. And you find a lot of times, especially young people who've grown up in families where maybe the father is a bishop, or the mother's a pastor, or their parents are in government, sometimes you find they'll always say, my parents said, don't do this, you embarrass us. And they grow with that thing. But the thing is, where's the lie if society really does drag people through for their shame? So these are things we have to be able to encounter. And for me, when I read the word of God, Jesus says that he will not put us to shame. He will not put us to shame. When a woman was brought to him who was caught in adultery and she was naked, and there was a moment of shame, he never raised a stone against her, and he covered her by protecting her. And these are things that we have to understand, that it's not that we're passive over certain things, but the question is, we need to be very intentional about finding a way to heal people, and also be very intentional in terms of our care. Do we really care for people as much, or is this just a topic of discussion to seem that we are in tune with what's happening or what's popular to be able to talk about nowadays? When you break things down in detail, there's a lot of things we have to look at. Yeah.
Oh, wow, that was insightful and very very heavy to mention.
Okay.
So when I'll be coming to you in just a moment, maybe you can share your some of your final thoughts on the subject. Before that, I just want to mention, because you're hearing Annette's story and what Abel has had to share on shame. I feel there is also a lot to do today with people encountering things that they feel are too big for them, and this is when we're talking about suicide. And this happens two ways. The way I say it, sometimes you get yourself in trouble, or you do something that you perceive to be trouble or shameful, that is so big you feel there's no other way out of it. As the example that Annette gave with the friend who was caught with some pornographic material and later on had to commit suicide. And secondly, another way that this happens is when life hits you with a couple of unfortunate series that you feel are beyond you, that you feel you don't have the capacity to solve, the capacity to come out of. And that's just not true. Whenever you get to a point where you feel whatever is going on in your life is an ending, like, you feel like you have such a big problem that it can't be solved, there's no way out of it. You feel like you are stuck in a loop or in a dilemma where you feel your efforts don't matter. Whatever you do, there's no way of fixing it. But that's just not true. And even when you feel unloved, when the closest person to you doesn't see you, doesn't see your pain, you have to understand that you are still made in God's image and God still loves you, and there is hope for you still. There is hope for you still. So Wanda, you can just share a couple of final thoughts on this matter as we conclude.
Okay. I must say this is a very important topic and it's very close to my heart, because at some point I went through some very confusing moments in my life, and I felt like there's no other way. There are certain moments, things I went through where I know that if I explain to somebody, they won't get it, they won't relate, and they won't understand. And like Abel said, they expect you to be okay because you're a believer and you're a minister. They expect that you have it all figured out. I think this is where things like friendship comes in, because I remember I had to go to my friend and the guy, I can't handle this anymore, and people are able to relate. And then this is the thing I can say. I can say, don't just expect that no one will listen. Don't think no one is there to listen. Like there are a lot of people out there who are willing to listen to your story. Just be willing to tell it and be willing to heal. There are certain people who go through certain issues that they are dealing with unforgiveness, and they are dealing with things that are bothering them in their hearts, and they hold on to those things, and because they hold on to those things, they fail to progress. So yeah, I think those are my final thoughts with regards to our topic today. Yeah.
Okay. So Laura, let's like to hear from you briefly, and then maybe we can have. There's a question on screen. I think we can have Abel respond to that after Laura, you've had your final say.
Okay, I think my final say would just be the narrative of Job talks about there is hope for a tree, even if it be cut down. And suicidal thoughts or mental health issues come from fear of living another day. But know that perfect love does cast out fear, and God loves you enough to erase your fears and give you hope for another day. So there is hope in God, no matter how far back you've fallen. If you are alive, it's because there's still more that God has for you to take a next breath and for Him to lift you slowly but surely. The process may be long, the process may be short, but either way, God will come through for you, and keep clinging on to Him, even in prayer. Never neglect the place of prayer.
Amazing. So true. So true. So, Mr. Rebel, we have a question on screen, and it reads: being practical, someone comes to you and tells you they are suicidal. What do you do? What steps do you take with them? What do you tell them?
Yeah. So the practical aspect I'd first take is, of course, you have to assess the situation. If they're having, listen. So the thing about that there helps a lot with therapies is there's someone who's actually taking the time to listen. Take the time to listen. Listen to the situation. At the same time, if you feel it's beyond the control, which usually is, fast them. Find a way so that they can get a chance to also meet somebody or someone who's helpful, either a counselor or a therapist. But the most important thing, the first thing, is to listen. Ask questions. What's leading to you? What exactly happened? Show a sense of, not even just show, you have to genuinely have a sense of concern for the situation. Because sometimes it's the situation or the circumstances of that person's moment that is leading them to feel that they're suicidal. So something at somewhere, some relationship or something in their life didn't work out the way it was expected. And now they're at a place where they can't see anything past this situation. So, did they go through a broken relationship? Did they fail an exam? Did they, you know what I'm saying? You have to take time to listen attentively and follow through with what they're actually telling you. And when you actually take the time to listen, then you begin to be able to understand that, okay, this is where this person's coming from. And if you know them and the fact that they've told you this, which means probably you have a relationship, or you're in a more, or they feel that you are the person. Otherwise, they wouldn't have told you. So, which means they're turning to you because they have a sense of trust. And also remember, stay trustful. Okay. Please, when someone says it's not a topic to begin to share. You know what I'm saying? Even long after they've recovered, you find certain people have relapses because someone told you they were suicidal, and then they healed, and then you decided, well, they're okay now, let me tell other people, we're giants of was by one time. You know what I'm saying? And if something, I remember my pastor would say this. He preached a sermon on gossip, and he says, sometimes you can't stop yourself from hearing some information, but you can make sure that you're the last person to get it. So which means if someone comes to you, you must build a wall that nothing leaves you. If information has come to you, it stays with you. So if someone can come to you and tell you something that personal, which means they have a sense of trust for you. They have a sense of trust in you that you are the best person they can talk to. So which means they are hoping that you will listen and you'll give good advice. And when you listen and you assess, you're walking through this person's life, and you're now seeing the situation from a more clearer mind, because now you keep asking more questions. Well, so how did this happen? So then what happened? And then what happened? And then what happened? And what ends up happening is that they're taking you through a picture, because in their situation they can't see as clearly as you can. So then that's when you can be able. And then that's if you're at a very critical moment where you can't be calling therapy. Sometimes people call you up at 01. You can't call it someone, say, please help this person. So ask the questions, know the story, take time to listen. And then after you've listened and you've got, usually for me, I take after that, when we talk and we assess and we bring when I feel like the person is okay, we take time to pray, and then we say, hey, let's do this. Let's talk again in the next couple of minutes. So let's talk again in an hour. Well, let's meet up. Let's meet up as soon as if it's on phone or it's find a way that you can now begin to engage and show them that you are very much concerned about this situation. Because it's sometimes if someone is going to tell you, which means they want you to listen, and they're hoping, they're trying to get the last amount of hope that they can get before they make this last or a bad turn in their life.
Amazing. So unfortunately, we're getting to the end of tonight's chat, and as I'm really getting the sense there's really need to talk more about mental health. There's really need to talk more about this and to share this within our circles, within different communities, because this is affecting a vast number of people. And I think October is a mental health awareness month, so I'm guessing we'll be seeing a lot of more talks coming up on mental health, countrywide and whatnot. And I'd encourage you watching this right now just to also begin to engage in the conversation and bring about awareness on mental health within your circles, within your influence circles. So Annette, even as we close, tonight, I just love to hear briefly your last statements in regards to tonight's question.
So I think I'm just going to add on what Abel said about when somebody comes to you talking about what you're going through, they want to commit suicide. I think the best thing to do is show them that love, that attentive ear. So I'm going to answer this with what happened it happened just like a month ago, my young sister. So this is something that I really went through it. So the thing is that she got pregnant, and then what happens, you're in school, you get pregnant, your parents, everybody's just there. Why would you do this and stuff like that? So she actually called me. She's like, no, me, what I'm going through, I think I'm just going to end it because of this pregnancy. I feel I can't go on. Everyone is giving me a bad name. But I was there to listen. I told her, I'm here for you and I love you. There's no need that you're going to commit suicide. So if you have somebody out there who comes, to tell about their situation, be there for them. Show the love, tell them you care for them, and you handle the situation with them. You're going to help them go through that situation stage by stage. And by that, we're going to have a better society. Yes.
Okay. All right. Thanks for sharing, Annette. And thanks to all our viewers tonight. Thank you for tuning into this conversation. Thank you for being a part. Once again, thank you for the guests, Mr. Abel. Annette, it was good having you, and we're grateful that you got to participate in this.
Thank you.
To our ambassadors who are sharing the chat room on various platforms, we are grateful for your support, and we applaud your contribution to empowering Zambians with conversations that we believe have the potential to change the world. So we are the chat room. We are live every Sunday, and we will be back next Sunday, 1940 hours. Can't wait to interact more with you. Barry out.